onto this. So in the meantime, until we can get Dr. Levatin back, we're going to go ahead and just introduce Nicole. And so for those of you who are not in our area, this is my dear friend, Nicole Gould. Nicole, tell everybody about yourself and where you're from and where you work and what you do.
Well, my name's Nicole. I'm a registered dietitian. I work at Vital Choice Health Store. It's actually in North Royalton. I've grown up in Cleveland my whole life. It wasn't really until I did my dietetic internship, I went to New York for a year and I worked with naturopaths, and it really got me more into the alternative side of things. When I became an RD, kind of similar to what Dr. Levatin was saying, did a hospital rotation and really was uncomfortable with what I was seeing, giving a diabetic diet, but it was basically just putting a pack of Sweet and Low on the tray instead of regular sugar. To me, that's not really healing anyone. I really believe that food is medicine. It's not a new concept in any way. In fact, it's very old. And you can heal people through food. It's kind of amazing. So that's really where my passion went. And because of that, I went back to the store that I started at, Vital Choice, and there I can practice and do personal consults as well as work on the floor to kind of guide people through supplements, because the world of supplementation, there's a lot of great things, but there's also some people just trying to make money off you, and just some not so great, not very clean products that I try to guide people away from and really help them learn what's going to work for them, what they need, prioritize, and get them feeling better and staying healthy.
Especially when it comes to the world of food and supplementation, I think there's a lot of confusion about what some of the best strategies are to really maximize health and immune function. One of the things that we always talk about is the way that the body's immune system responds to what we put into it. I know that you are an expert in the way that the body can either increase inflammation or decrease inflammation based upon the foods we put in. Would you mind telling the viewers on here first how inflammation is a part of what we eat, and then how you can change the inflammatory state of your body based upon the foods and supplements that you put in?
Absolutely, yeah. So the root cause of many diseases, they're estimating about 80% of diseases, has to do with inflammation. So inflammation in short term is a good thing. If we cut ourselves, then inflammation signals healing and enzymes, and so it's a very good thing in short term. But I always use this campfire example. You think of a nice controlled campfire, but what happens when that fire spreads out into the woods and how destructive that can be? That's exactly what happens with inflammation when it becomes too high. And unfortunately, the typical American diet is very inflammatory. Corn, wheat, dairy, meat that's not grass-fed, peanuts, it's everything that we typically eat. What we don't eat, a lot of wild fish. It's got to be wild, the wild fish. A wide variety of colors with vegetables. We eat corn and potatoes. We've got to get more broccoli and purple carrots and all these different colors in a lot of greens. Nuts and seeds can be very anti-inflammatory. Even dark chocolate can be actually really good for inflammation. So it's more of that Mediterranean style of eating. And we first figured it out looking at these other countries and these other cultures that don't have the types of inflammatory diseases that we have. So that's really what I try to focus on, no matter who you are, whether you're a child or an adult or someone that is suffering a chronic disease. I really don't think there's anyone that couldn't benefit from a more anti-inflammatory lifestyle.
Amen. Well, Nicole, you and I are both parents of small children. And, one of the biggest struggles, I know we've talked about this at length, is that the struggles that you see with kids in school and what they're being fed, both by what moms and dads who don't know better are giving their children, but also what they're being given in school.
Yeah.
And so obviously you live in this world all the time. Would you mind telling everybody about some of the more common things that you see, and then some strategies that moms and dads can use to try and help with improving the quality of nutrition that their child has when going to school and how it affects their immune system?
Absolutely, yeah. So I would say the biggest nutritional, I don't even call it a nutrient, but the thing working the most against us is sugar. And kids are, even more so than adults, eating more, about 30 to sometimes 50 teaspoons of sugar a day. That's insane. That's like 100 grams. That's way more. I always ask people the question, how much sugar, added sugar I'm talking about, do we need for our health? Zero. None. So any amount is extra. And unfortunately, between sugary beverages, even juices, they're not necessary. That's a quick way to get sugars in. Every breakfast cereal that's marketed for kids is just sugar. Our white pastas and white breads and things like that, that also contributes as well. But it's a lot of the gummies and the foods that are marketed for kids that are just pure sugar and chemicals. And that, I think, is one of the biggest suppressors of the immune system, and also increases inflammation. It could mess with focus and concentration in kids and contribute to behavioral issues. And I see it. I see kids, and I've had teachers that have asked me to talk to different parents because after lunch, all of a sudden their kids are bouncing off the walls. And what did they have in their lunchbox? They had some sort of juice, not even real juice, but some fruit punch type Capri Sun. Those are not great things. Pack water, pack milk if your kid needs something else. But gummies and chocolate and those kinds of things. Then you get your typical sandwich with lunch meat, and there's no veggies, there's really no fruits, there's no actual nutrients. And we have to get back to eating foods, not eating chemicals. And that's where I think the biggest help for our immune system is going to be. So reducing the sugar, increasing your colors of fruits and vegetables, the natural colors. There are purple carrots out there. Kids get so excited about those. They're really dark purple and yellow in the middle, and they taste like a carrot. There's blue potatoes. There's so many different fruits and vegetables, and we kind of get in this rut of the same thing over and over. And kids like to be excited about what they're eating. That's one of the things that draws them to foods is, what cartoon character is on there, what color is it? And that makes them want to eat it. I have kids that literally eat just certain colored foods, and so I have to make plans around that. And, kids can be picky, but don't forget you're the adult, and your job is to, just like you wouldn't let them run across the street without looking both ways, or be in an environment that is unsafe. Of course, you're going to also want to focus on teaching them what we put in our body is very important, and get them growing foods with you. You can grow microgreens right in the kitchen. It grows very quickly, or little different vegetables. I'm not good at gardening by any means, but there are some things that my kids have really helped me with, and then they get excited. Take them shopping with you. Let them be involved in the process, prepping the food. Don't just say, hey, eat these veggies. That's usually not going to work. So getting them involved is also going to be very helpful, and just exposing them to different and new things. And don't forget, they don't like it once. It doesn't mean that they never like it. And also, if you don't like it, it doesn't mean your kids won't like it. I have so many parents that don't want to eat veggies, or they don't, and they just say, oh, my kid's not going to like that. And kids want to. They want to try things, and they like it. So give them a chance, and try to incorporate more of those healthy colors from natural fruits and vegetables in.
Yep. One of the strategies that we have used with my kids is that the number of years they are is the number of required bites they have to take of every new food.
Ooh.
And, it's been very successful because it's helped the kids to understand that they're not going to, number one, get away from the table without trying their food, but it's also helped them to dramatically expand their palate. If you've never tried this with your child, anything that is a more bland food, right? I mean, who likes broccoli the first time that they've tasted it? Very, very, very few people. I will tell you this. We were very diligent about getting our kids to go and eat fruits and vegetables. And what has happened is that they have a very broad palate, where if we go to a restaurant, my son's first choice is, if he sees broccoli on the menu, he's going to select it.
Yeah.
Because he's really acquired such a strong taste for it. Same thing with you moms and dads. If you're struggling with those things where you're a picky eater, you have to lead by example. And so doing the same thing is just requiring yourself to go and do the same thing you want your kids to do by leading by example. Is take a few bites. Even if you don't love it, you'll eventually acquire a taste. And every habit requires repetition to build.
Yeah, I think that's good. And helping them understand why it's important to eat that. My kids were so young when we started talking about this, and now they're talking to other kids about it, and even teaching adults that, this is why we need these dark blueberries, because that's where antioxidants are, and that helps our immune system. And they like learning. Kids are little sponges and use that. And when they understand why you're asking them to do something, they're usually more likely to do it.
Yeah, it's very, very true. The more that your kids are educated about why it's important to go and make healthful choices, the more that, number one, you build healthy habits in them, but two, the more they're going to be able to make good decisions when they're on their own. Because there's, that's the real struggle that you're going to run into, is that your kids have to make decisions when there's choices in front of them. And if you do a good enough job of teaching them the why, then the how becomes much easier, and the what they're going to do when they have to make those choices becomes much easier, because now they've got a thought process.
Absolutely.
You know, if they don't think about what is required for them to go and stay healthy, then they will make the best choices possible. So, I see that Dr. Levatin was able to get back on the audio. Dr. Levatin, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. I seem to be having some kind of a problem with my internet connection. You probably can't see me, but you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can definitely hear you.
I do apologize. I didn't leave on purpose.
Oh, certainly. Technical difficulties are always one of the challenges with doing webinars and things like this. But thank you for jumping back on. And Nicole, with your permission, I know Dr. Levatin has a tongue concern. Would you mind if we let her?
Yeah.
So Dr. Levatin, you were telling us about your background and how you came to be the doctor that you are today. So go ahead and continue from where you left off.
Okay, I'm not sure at what point I got cut off, but what I was trying to say is I got into homeopathy as my primary treatment modality because homeopathy is such a wonderful system of healing and balancing health. It's a system that was developed by a German physician over 200 years ago and has been used continuously since then around the world. And I love it for many reasons. First of all, it's very safe. Homeopathy uses specially diluted, specially prepared substances that are perfectly safe to give to children and, elderly people with fragile health, people like this. Also, homeopathy it assists the body to heal and balance its own self. So it's individualized to the person and really can have some gentle acting, but very deep and profound acting healing. So if kids do have acute problems, I've treated so many different types of acute problems with homeopathy, from coughs, colds, ear infections, minor injuries, runny noses, things like that. And I also treat on what I call the constitutional level, meaning I'm working on the underlying health condition of the person. So maybe there's a chronic condition such as asthma or eczema or tendency to get recurrent infections. You still hearing me there? I just want to check in.
Yep, hearing you great. Thank you.
I know we're talking about back to school, so certainly if a child is under homeopathic treatment, coming in before school is starting to get sort of a tune-up on their constitutional remedy is a great idea. I'm not sure how many of your patients use homeopathy, but it's a wonderful thing to think of at the beginning of the school year.
So Dr. Levatin, obviously, with the children that you work with, we see a lot of kids that have really weakened immune systems, very challenged in their ability to function at a high level in school and even stay in school because of the weaknesses that they have. So what are some of the strategies that you would recommend for moms and dads to help as we're getting closer and closer to the school year, so that they can get their children, number one, back into the routine of school and to make sure they're going to have the most successful year possible?
Well, coming into the school year, first of all, you want to start helping the children to get an adequate amount of sleep. So since it's been the summer, maybe they've been staying up late and waking up late, you want to start moving that bedtime back earlier. You don't want to wait till just the night before school and then suddenly expect your kids to go to sleep 3 hours earlier than they've been going to sleep. So start kind of inching that bedtime back so you get them into bed at a good time so that they can then get up in the morning and have the energy to go to school. And I recommend like moving it back maybe 10, 15 minutes a night. So it's a subtle change for them. Obviously, eating healthy is very important. And I heard that that's what you were talking about, avoiding the sugars and the additives and things like that, processed carbohydrates, getting them on their fruits and vegetables, seeds, nuts, meats, those type of things. I am an advocate for vitamin C and vitamin D, just some simple nutrients. Most of us don't have enough vitamin D here in Northeast Ohio. You still hearing me?
Yeah, hearing you just fine. Thank you. Can you hear us, Dr. Levatin? Dr. Levatin, can you hear us? Hopefully she'll be able to get back in. So, that's actually a really good point too. I know that was one of the supplements that I was going to bring up with you was vitamin D.
Yeah, absolutely. Right away too, even as infants. Yep. Of course, if we can get nutrients from foods, I will go that route. But D is really one that you don't get from foods. It's mainly from sunlight. And wherever you are watching us. I know here where we are pretty much September to May, we get 0. And even when we do get it, we're slathered in sunscreen to protect against cancer, and we're not getting the D. So D is really critical, and it kind of got misclassed as a fat-soluble vitamin. It's more of a pro-hormone. And so I say that because people get very nervous about overdosing on fat solubles. A, you have to be careful, and E, because you can have liver damage if you take too much. D is very different. There's very low risk of overdoing it, and really little side effects. In fact, the only reports of vitamin D toxicity, I think people were taking upwards of 50,000 IUs a day for several months, and they had leg pain. You know, it wasn't anything severe. So D is involved in every cellular process, and the immune system is no exception. They show that kids with low D levels and adults with low D levels get sick more frequently or at higher risk for getting the flu. And also, even they're doing studies with cancer and low D levels. So from all spectrums of the immune system, D is really critical, and we're just not getting enough. So you can do it in a drop form where, you know, my kids stick out their tongue and there's a little drop. It's tasteless. They think it's fun to do that. You can do it in a small little pill. There are chewables. There's gummies as well. I'm not a fan of gummies because of the sugar, but if that's the only way your kids will do it, that's also an option too. So you really can get vitamin D in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. You know, one point that I want to bring up about that is, you know, a lot of folks really underestimate the amount that they need. And you have to also think about things like skin color variances. So someone like me, it does not take a lot before I get a reasonable amount of vitamin D in my skin because I don't have anything to block my absorption. But the darker that your skin color is, the more that your body is going to have difficulty producing vitamin D with exposure to sunlight. So if you're African American, if you're Indian, and you're from a climate or, you know, developmentally where you normally would have much more exposure so you can get adequate vitamin D, in these northern climates, it's really significant deficiencies that we see in darker skinned individuals. So, you know, we always talk about making recommendations of trying to do at least a supplemental baseline of at least 5,000 IUs per day. I know the Vitamin D Research Council has actually given a safe upper limit of 10,000. So it's, you know, if you're darker skinned, consider going towards the safe upper limits. It's important that you really maintain a relatively high level of vitamin D throughout your entire lifespan. It's got so many benefits. With kids, Nicole, what do you typically recommend as far as your dosing levels? And do you have an age variance that you make recommendations?
Well, right from infancy, and this is actually something that through research, but also I was very happy the doctor that my kids first went to, she said right away 500 IUs. So right as newborns, 500 is perfectly fine. Usually for kids, I say 1,000, though for me, getting tested and knowing where their levels are is always a very smart thing to do, because if you know where your level is, then I know what to give you. So I really encourage, and I think more and more doctors are doing blood testing for vitamin deficiencies, especially D. That's a really smart thing to do. But usually for younger adolescents or kids, I say 1,000, but as soon as even like 12 and up, it jumps up.
Yeah. I know we were very encouraged when we took both of our kids in for their wellness checks at the pediatrician, that via the PA and the nurse practitioner who saw the kids both recommended doing vitamin D level testing, which, you know, thankfully neither one of the kids had any issues with. But we think it's very important to really address that as a big component. So, you know, Nicole, I know as school is hitting and moms and dads are starting to pack lunches, you know, one of the biggest challenges they're always having is, well, what do I give the kids for lunch? What do we give for snacks? What are some of the snacks that you found to be the ones that, number one, taste the best and tend to be very well received by kids, especially when moms and dads are at that point where they want their kids to eat healthier? The kids are maybe a little resistant. So how do you help them with making that transition from, you know, maybe having a more inflammatory diet to a less and less inflammatory diet, getting the kids on the right track?
Well, baby steps is always good. It depends on, you know, how far away the kids are from eating these things. So sometimes we have to take really small steps, and it's just sneaking veggies into mac and cheese, or, you know, introducing them to a little bit of fish, and just, you know, maybe there's a healthier fish sticks recipe. There's one that I give to people, so maybe I can throw some of these recipes up. But things like hard-boiled eggs is a quick and easy snack. Nuts and seeds are always a go-to. There are some really good bars out there, too, that are just crushed nuts and dates and dried fruits and things like that, like Lara bars, I know, are popular. Yeah, I know. Dr. Scott's always in the store getting them.
We clean them out every time we come in.
Those are good though. My kids like them. There's also these square bars that are a little higher in protein that my kids really like. That, you know, they've got a little bit of dark chocolate on the outside, so kids really seem to like it. Cutting up fruits and making different dips and yogurt with fruit and things like that. Those are really quick and easy things, and I try to use those. They've also come a long way with the chip varieties that they're having. There is these chips called Bonitos that are bean chips that look like tortilla chips, but they're made from like black beans, so they're high in protein and fiber. So it's still a chip, but if your kids want something more to snack on, it's a better option. There's pea crisps that look like little peas, but they're
good.
Yeah, they're good. So yeah, there's a lot of things out there, and I can even post some recipes too on Vital Choices site and share it with your site.
That'd be wonderful.
I'll give you guys some good things. There's some protein muffins I make for the kids that just have oats and mashed bananas and a little bit of yogurt, and you can add any fruits you want and bake them. We freeze them. That way we always have a really quick go-to because I'm a mom and I work full time, so I can't always make homemade gourmet meals. I have to do a lot of freezing and meal preps on Sundays, and that's another key too. I always encourage this concept of having a second lunch or another meal. When the kids come home from school, instead of reaching for these snack foods, because when you hear snack, you always think of Goldfish crackers and pretzels and those kinds of foods, and that's not really giving them any nutrition, any fuel. So we'll have another lunch. I'll make them a bowl of soup, or some hard-boiled eggs and some Ezekiel toast. That's a kind of bread, that's a sprouted bread that my kids really like.
It's really good.
Yeah.
My kids love it as well.
If your kids are used to Wonder Bread, that's a big leap. So start them into just like a 100% whole grain is a good in-between. But Ezekiel is wonderful, and it's actually wheat-free. It's not gluten-free, but it's using sprouted grains, so it's much more easily digested. So we'll do little triangles of Ezekiel toast and put coconut oil or almond butter on there. Cut up veggies, anything like that, fruit. We'll make a smoothie, but I don't go crazy with the fruits. I go crazy with the veggies. So we throw in spinach, and then it turns green, and they think that's really cool. Or you can throw in cucumber for the summer, and it's really yummy, and you can hide it really well as also. So those are just some other tips. Yeah.
Nicole, one of the things that we see a lot, and when we're having conversations with moms and dads, is they really struggle with getting their kids to eat protein. And for those of you who aren't aware of the value of protein for your child, it is incredibly important your child gets sufficient amounts of protein. It is a building block. I mean, for literally every part of their body, every process in their body, they require protein. Nicole, why don't you tell the moms and dads on here more about your child's requirements for protein and some of the things it does in their body and some great protein sources that would be easy for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So depending on the age, I would say probably 50 grams for most child ages is a good goal to hit. But even I know a lot of adults that aren't getting that much.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be animal protein necessarily. So if you're sitting there saying, I'm vegetarian, it's okay. We can figure out how to get it that way. Nuts, seeds, beans are a powerhouse.
Oh, yeah.
So if your kids don't like to eat chicken, garbanzo beans, black beans, cannellini beans, there's so many lentils. There are so many good vegetarian sources of protein as well. The nut butters, and branch out beyond peanut butter, because like I said, peanuts are inflammatory. So there's almond butter, there's walnut butter, there's some really yummy blends there, and kids usually really like that when they're used to it. So it takes some time to convert them, but they'll end up not wanting the peanut butter anymore.
Yeah, one of the ones that we use in our house that's helped to kind of bridge the gap that satisfies their pasta craving, but still gets them adequate proteins, low glycemic index, is lentil pasta.
Yeah.
And for those of you who've never tried it, it's really good. I mean, we eat lentil pasta on a regular basis because, kids love it. It's quick, it's easy. But here's the great part. Lentils are a complete protein, and they're a low glycemic index. So 2 major benefits. So all you would need to do is balance out the omega-6s in there with a good omega-3 source to try and make it a lot better. So omega-3 sources would be things like avocado oil, olive oil, things like that you can put on it, so you would bring it back into balance. Because you want an ideal ratio of 4 omega-6s to every 1 omega-3.
Absolutely. Yeah, we do the black bean pasta. Same deal. My daughter just thinks it's the coolest thing to have black pasta.
Oh yeah.
My son sometimes thinks it's disgusting, so then we do the lentil for him. You never know with kids. And they change their mind a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
So be prepared for that, but then keep reintroducing it and give different options, and hopefully they'll come around.
Yeah, and those are great suggestions. Now I know we talked a little bit about vitamin D, and we talked about before the interview about supplementation. So what are the supplements that you recommend that every child should be on to try and help with immune function, recovery, brain function, things like that?
Well, I know Dr. Levatin mentioned C and D, and I also think
Mm-hmm.
those are very important. Probiotics to me are probably the biggest.
Yep.
Supplement that we should be giving our kids, because we're not eating it. Our food is pretty dead. We're not doing a lot of cultured and fermented foods like we once were. And our gut bacteria, our good bacteria that's all over the body, we're actually more bacteria than we are human cells. I always like to share that we have trillions of these
Mm-hmm.
good bacteria on us. And that's important to keep rebalancing. We use them, we lose them. We do things like antibiotics, and we eat foods that throw off our balance, and that reduces them. But if we're not replacing them through cultured foods on a daily basis, we don't have enough. And about 70 to 80% of our immune cells are actually in the gut, in the stomach.
Yep.
And they're finding also a lot of brain chemicals are made in the stomach, serotonin and GABA. So not only are probiotics helping with regularity and from a digestive standpoint, which is what most people think, they are incredibly beneficial for our immune system and for anxiousness and mood and focus and things like that. The more they're studying these little guys, the more they're finding benefit to them. So it's really interesting, but I think that is a great supplement that you can give to your kids. And there's one product I really like. We talked about C and D and the probiotics. All three are combined in a product by Garden of Life. It's a doctor-formulated Organic Kids Plus. You usually find it in the refrigerated section, but it has a little bit of C, about 400 IUs of D, and a good amount of probiotics. The two things you want to look for in a probiotic are the strains and the amount. So how many billion, and it sounds crazy, billion, that sounds like such a big number, but we have everything from a 1 billion to a 400 billion in the store. So 5 billion is what the kids dose typically is. I think that's a good dose. And don't ignore the strain variety. We have a lot of people that come and ask for acidophilus. It's okay, but that's mainly in the small intestine, so you're missing out on all these other strains that are in other places. So that particular doctor-formulated probiotic has a wide range of strains that are in there, and it's also a chewable, so it's pretty good tasting. So that's one of my favorite products that combines the C, the D, and the probiotics. So that is a good baseline. If your kid gets sick all the time, make sure they're sleeping well, and get in a probiotic like that.
We have been giving our kids probiotics literally since they exited the womb. So my wife, and if anybody is a breastfeeding mom out there, we wanted to try and make sure we're fortifying from the beginning. So my wife would even take a little bit of probiotic powder and sprinkle it on her nipple. Mm-hmm. You already make some when you already make a very high dose of probiotics when you breastfeed. But if you really want to try and make sure that you're doing extra to bolster, that's another way that you can do it. So if you're bottle feeding, you can put more probiotics into your baby's bottle, especially if you have a formula-fed baby.
Absolutely, yeah, that's great advice. So there's the supplements like that are just, I think, basics for anyone to have a good immune system that's functioning. And then there's a group of supplements for those that feel like they're coming down with something or are already sick. And that would be things like oregano oil. Oregano and garlic and olive leaf. Those are things that are very antiviral as well as antibacterial. I think we get sick and we run for an antibiotic. Mm-hmm. But most of the things we're sick with are viral, and an antibiotic not only isn't going to help, but then you've just killed your gut bacteria.
Yep. So
doing something like oregano is much more safe from that standpoint, and it also addresses if it's viral, if it's bacterial, if it's fungal, because it has all of those properties to it. So that is one of my favorite things, especially for sinus issues, anything in this area. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. So they have it in the oil. It's probably a little potent for infants and for maybe toddlers. I don't know. Have you ever given it to someone that young?
So we give it to our kids as toddlers.
Okay.
And so from pretty much 2 on, what we would do is we would put it onto a spoon with a little bit of organic applesauce.
Okay.
So, and they would get it in the spoon with the applesauce, and we'd have a squeezy organic applesauce that would go and chase it down so they can get past the taste.
Jeez.
Because it tastes terrible.
It does.
But I will tell you, you something. If you've never used it before, it is amazing. And in our house, it's the go-to. And I'll tell you, my kids have just tremendously strong immune systems. When the other kids in their classrooms are coming down with, all of the viruses and the gook, and they're sick for days. My daughter last year missed 1 day of school. My son missed none. So if that gives you any idea as to what we're talking about, that's power, along with the chiropractic side of things, it's pretty amazing. So we have a question on here. Marianne had a question about what is the name of the probiotic. What was the one that you recommended?
So the
you, Marianne.
company is Garden of Life, and the actual name is Doctor Formulated Organic Kids, and there's a plus sign. So I should have brought the box. I actually had it to bring and I forgot. But I could even put a link to it after on the Vital Choice or on the Elite Health and Wellness page, so you'll know. But yeah, I think Garden of Life only makes the 1 Kids chewable. They also make a powder called raw probiotics, which is great for infants that or kids that cannot yet chew. They say 4 and up on the chewable probiotics. I feel very comfortable giving it to kids younger as long as they can chew, or you can crush it up. It has nothing to do with the potency. It's more about physically to chew it. That's why they want them to be older. But I gave it to my kids very young. And also just thinking of it with the chewables, don't be afraid to teach your kids how to swallow pills at a young age. My kids got the biggest kick out of it when they were like 3. I started with very teeny little probiotics, and they did it. So now I don't have to worry about chewables or gummies or things that taste good. They just take a pill. We can do oregano instead of in the oil. We do it in a small little pill, and they take it very well. And for me, that's just much easier than having to mix it and get them, come on, it's yummy, and it tastes like oregano.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
I have so many moms that say, I ask, can your kids swallow? And they say, no. Well, have you ever tried? And they say, no. So try, use things that are very, very teeny and just introduce them to the concept. And that way you could avoid the whole gummy and chewable thing that happens later on. And even into adulthood, I have so many adults that just want gummies. Gummies are okay, but you get much, much lower potency. So if you're doing a gummy vitamin, you're not really getting very much out of it. You probably have to take 4 of them a day, and most people don't want to take that many. So then you're getting barely anything. So
yeah, somebody tells me we should probably do a whole video about proper nutrition for adults.
We can.
So if you guys are interested, make sure you shoot up a hand and let us know. Well, we can definitely put that together.
Yeah.
So, and were there any other supplements that you wanted to go through, or topics that we hadn't addressed yet, Nicole?
Well, there are some amazing supplements, and if you have questions about specifics, not to brag about Vital Choice, but
it's okay.
We're very good at finding what is going to work for you and better catering what the specific symptoms are. Not that we're doctors, but it's different if you have a wet cough versus if you have a runny nose and a cold. There's different supplements that fit in. There is one that I love, though, that is a like elderberry syrup. There's a lot of different brands out there. Just make sure they're not putting any extra colors or anything like that in there. Elderberry is incredibly antiviral, great for colds and seasonal type challenges, and it tastes usually really yummy. So kids will take that right off the spoon. That's a favorite. There's another one called Umka that my kids love, and that stuff works. If you get it at first symptoms, like the first day your kids feel like they're coming down with something, Umka is an amazing supplement. Comes in chewables, comes in liquids, comes in syrup, even comes in like a hot drink that you can make. So that's another one of my favorites. And I know Dr. Levatin is really big on homeopathy. I've had some great luck with a product by Boiron called Cold Care. They make it for adults and kids. It's the same formula. You just have to be really good at taking it. You take it every 15 minutes for the first hour. And if you do that, it knocks out a cold like that. So those are some of my favorites, but there's so many different things that will help. But definitely given that probiotics, the D and C, that'll at least get their innate immune system functioning well. Do some chiropractic. It's really helped as well for my kids. So especially the ear issues my daughter was kind of in a cycle of having. So this guy has really done wonders from that perspective too. So
thank you very much. Appreciate that. And leading into the chiropractic, what I want to do is I want to take a few minutes here with you now and talk about one of the other sides here that oftentimes is not necessarily addressed. And so we've talked about stress. I'm going to share my screen with you in a moment because it's important to understand that stress is a huge influencer, but stress comes from many, many different places that we may not necessarily realize. So I'm going to bring my screen up here so we can share this. And this will hopefully give you a little bit better perspective as to what we're talking about when we say stress. And where is my PowerPoint? Oh, hold on, folks.
I think stress too is something that affects kids more than ever these days. It's kind of incredible how many moms or parents come into the store talking about anxiety at such young ages. And
Yep.
I don't know if it's because of social media and bullying and different things, but I don't remember having that much stress at 7 years old that some of these kids are having. And I think that's a really important thing to be aware of and address.
Yeah. I completely agree, and it's such a big issue. And so we're gonna talk here about really what stress looks like from the perspective of the way that our brains and nervous systems are going to be affected. Hopefully, everything is going to pop up the way that I want it to. It's not showing me the screen that I was hoping to see on here. Sorry, everyone. So I'm trying to pull up a presentation here for you, and for some reason or another, it's being a little sticky here. So I'm going to go into presentation mode here. Hopefully everyone can see this. I want to go through and just take a few minutes here to show you what we're talking about here when we really deal with stress. So when we start talking about the classroom and trying to have a healthy year, we want to talk about making sure that we are addressing multiple areas of the way that we approach stress. Because maximum performance requires maximum focus, and we need to be very much aware that our nervous system is always being bombarded by stress. And so we always say, be aware of the 3 T's: thoughts, traumas, toxins, emotional stress, physical stress, chemical stress. And so when you start looking at the 3 T's, when we start talking about thoughts, right, it's, a lot of kids are going to new schools, they're making new friends, peer pressure, changes in their coursework, increase in their course load. Many kids have, struggled just because they have problems focusing in class. Many kids stay up too late or are having difficulty sleeping. And of course, there's anxiety that comes with many of the aspects of either being in a new school or just being a student. It's sometimes they're, maybe not doing as well as they want, or just maybe they're having issues with kids at school. And of course, there's also just the constant stimulation from technology and video games and all of the things that come with that. So there's traumas, and traumas are things that we oftentimes don't think of. So it can be not just, having an injury, it can be bad posture, because what that does is put excessive stress on the spine and the nervous system. There's sports injuries, falls, bad sleep position. And the one that I always stress is sleeping on the belly. I know a lot of kids love to sleep on their bellies, but boy, moms and dads, if you can get them off of their bellies, it's one of the best things that you can do, because it puts so much torque in the upper part of their neck, what they call the main breaker, which is where the skull meets the top of the neck. And that area is the brainstem area. It is where so many vital nervous system tissues live. And when they sleep on their bellies constantly, it creates a tremendous amount of stress in that region. And it can start a big time shift in the balance from their nervous system from rest and digest to fight or flight, which we'll dig into later. Not having enough physical activity. Having proper exercise and a sufficient amount of exercise is so crucial to a child's nervous system developing normally, staying calm, producing, things like your endorphins and enkephalins, which keep the nervous system calm, along with those other positive neurotransmitters. So we also talk about things like toxins. And so like Dr. Levatin and Nicole have dove into quite heavily, it's the high sugar diet, processed foods, exposure to antibiotics. We're seeing more and more kids on mood altering meds like Adderall, Klonopin, Abilify, so on and so forth. Generally poor nutrition, not getting sufficient vitamins and minerals, kids drinking pop. Moms and dads, for those of you who allow your children to drink pop, one of the things that you want to think about versus even eating your sugar. When your kids drink the sugar, there is literally nothing to stop it from going straight into their bloodstream, spiking their blood sugar, and then being stored as fat. And as it goes through, creating tons and tons and tons of free radicals. That's why we're seeing an epidemic of kids being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes as early as their teens.
It is the one thing, not to jump in, but
No, go ahead.
the one food that if I could get rid of and eliminate, I think pop and the sugary beverages, that is the worst thing for us and for kids especially.
Yep.
And I was at a fair the other night, and the amount of kids chugging these different pops, not only are you giving them a ton of sugar, but there's chemicals, there's dyes, and there's
Yep.
caffeine.
Yep.
Caffeine is a drug. We should not be giving kids that. So it is just so destructive.
Amen, amen, and amen. I mean, how many times do you see kids that are chugging Red Bulls followed by a 5-hour energy chasing with a Monster?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just what we see all the time. So moms and dads really start trying to address that with your kids, because it just does so much harm to their nervous system. So when we talk about stress, right? Stress, you have to consider what this does. The 3 T's cause stress in our nervous system, and stress, for all intents and purposes, equals brain noise. When they've got a lot of background noise in their brain because their fight or flight nervous system is kicked on, it leads to poor focus and attention. It leads to anxiety. It leads to mood control issues like depression. If they are a kid who is formerly a good performer in school, it's going to lead to decreased performance in school and sports, and it dramatically weakens their immune system. So there is this shift, and we need to really address this shift. So, the nervous system's job is really important. And if you don't understand what the job of the nervous system is, this quote is a powerful, powerful quote. The function of the nervous system is to perceive the environment and coordinate the function of all other cells. And so when you understand that your brain is not floating out there by itself with no other input, the spinal column and the spinal cord is an input system for the brain. It requires input so it knows how to create output, right? If you have a food in your belly, it requires nerves that go up the spinal cord to your brain, and the brain says, oh, there's something down there that needs digested, and it triggers a whole cascade of processes that begin the process of digestion. But it requires this synergy of the spinal cord and the brain working together to determine how to go and keep our children healthy. There are several things that can cause significant interference to this. And on the screen, you see the term subluxation. Subluxation is a very important concept, because what it literally means is that when their spine isn't working the way that it should, when an area of the spine is misaligned and fixated, it results in interference. That interference can come from any of the sources that we talked about: chemical stress, physical stress, or emotional stress. But what that does at its core is it changes the way the child's nervous system works, and it begins to shift the balance of their nervous system from a state of homeostasis, which is maintenance, and it begins this process of shifting the balance over towards what is called the sympathetic, or the fight or flight division of the nervous system. A child's nervous system needs this balance for proper development. If we can't keep the child's nervous system in balance, then what will happen over time is that the sympathetic system starts to take over more and more and more. The parasympathetic system's job, they call it rest, digest, growth, development, healing. So there's a quote on the screen, which I hope you can see. It says, "You can't be in growth and protection at the same time," by Dr. Bruce Lipton. So if you've never heard the name Dr. Bruce Lipton is the forefather of what is called epigenetics. And what epigenetics really is, it's the study or the concept that our genes don't work without an environment around them influencing their expression. So it's not just the genes, it is what we put in that causes our genes to kick on or off. That really at its core is epigenetics. Well, the nervous system is the master controller. And if the nervous system is not getting the right type of input, both from the environment or from things that are being put into our bodies, it'll really change the way that our nervous system works. And it can shift the fight or flight nervous system into a place where it is stuck so on that it can just destroy our health, because it's not supposed to be a system that is running the show. It's supposed to be a finite balance between the parasympathetics and the sympathetics, and the brain needs those systems to work the way that they're supposed to for optimal health to be achieved. So stress dramatically decreases connection. Stress from the 3 T's can shift the balance heavily to fight or flight. There's a quote that I just love, and it says, "Nerves that wire together fire together." And that is a quote that I borrow from Dr. Norman Deutsch. He's a PhD. He's the author of 2 wonderful books, The Brain's Way of Healing. He also authored another book on neuroplasticity. If you get a chance, go and read Dr. Deutsch's works. Fantastic stuff. But this is a really important concept, because when nerves start to wire together, what they do is they start to become more and more powerful. Now, let's take a concept. For those of you who are bike riders, the very first time that we rode a bike, we were bad, right? Probably fell down, probably scraped our knees up, maybe bumped ourselves pretty good. But we got back on, maybe later that day, maybe the next day, and we were a little bit better. By the time we were at ride 100, we're getting pretty proficient. By the time we're at ride 1000, we're pulling wheelies and we're doing stunts. Why? Because we practiced a skill and our brain became more and more efficient at that skill every single time that we did that. It can be incredibly important, incredibly beneficial when our brain is getting positive feedback. But if the stress division of the nervous system is allowed to get too much traction and there's nothing that is getting it back into balance, then it'll take over more and more and more real estate in the brain. And they've been able to go and show this on functional MRI. So when this happens, the brain literally starts driving the show out of a state of fight or flight. And so when this happens, we see significant issues, because when the fight or flight system is kicked on, it suppresses our immune system, decreases our ability to focus. It decreases the ability of us to recover. It prevents us from getting proper sleep. It decreases our ability to go and focus and have clear thought processes. So when we talk about adjustments, right, what an adjustment does at its core is it restores connection. The process of adjusting shifts the brain from fight or flight back into rest, digest, growth, development, and healing mode, aka the parasympathetics. And there's some great research that's been done on that talks a lot more about the way that the brain works. So I have a short video here for you that just does a great job of talking about an area of the brain that is activated by the adjustments called the prefrontal cortex here. And this will just take a few minutes here.
The way your spine works actually changes the way your brain works. An amazing new study was conducted in 2015 in a hospital in Denmark. A group of people who had never had any chiropractic care before attended 2 sessions. One with real chiropractic care and one with sham chiropractic care. During both sessions, whole head brainwaves were recorded. The brainwave recordings, or electroencephalography, EEG for short, showed some very clear changes in the way the brain functions after the chiropractic session, and no changes happened after the sham session. The study showed a change in brain function of almost 20% on average after the chiropractic session. This study is really important because it's the 4th time this very same finding has been published in reputable research journals. And this study's data is collected and analyzed by non-chiropractic scientists. This means there is no doubt that adjusting your spine changes the way your brain operates. Because the Danish scientists recorded the brain waves, or EEG, over the whole head from 64 individual electrodes, they could also work out exactly where the changes in function were happening after the chiropractic session. They were able to show that the changes were most likely taking place in an area of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. This part of your brain is a little bit like the conductor of the brain, making all the other parts of your brain cooperate together in perfect harmony. The prefrontal cortex is the area of the brain where your executive functions take place. This means it's very important for our everyday behavior. It's the part of the brain needed for us to be able to carry out all goal-directed tasks: decision-making, memory and attention, intelligence, processing of pain and emotional responses to it, autonomic function, movement control, eye movements, and spatial awareness. Therefore, demonstrating that chiropractic care changes function of the prefrontal cortex could explain many previous research results that have been documented with chiropractic care, such as improvements in sensorimotor function relevant to falls prevention in the elderly, or better joint position sense in both the upper limb and the lower limb. Also improved muscle strength in several lower limb muscles, better pelvic floor muscle control, and better ability to carry out mental rotations of objects in space. Being able to accurately perceive where you are and where your arms and legs are is very, very important.
So for those of you who've never seen that video before, it's one of my favorites, or even heard that video before. It is one of my favorites because one of the things that it really does a great job of is explaining the way that the brain changes when when we do have these adjustments. And so a 20% boost in the function of the prefrontal cortex is a really, really significant boost. Oh, so I apologize if you were not able to get all the video. What I'll do is I'll try and get the PowerPoint posted. For some reason or other, we're having some issues with the screen share. So what I'll do is I can go ahead and get that posted here on a link later on. But for an understanding of the way that works, for those of you who don't really know too much about chiropractic, you have to understand that one of the biggest reasons why we do what we do is the ability that it has to go and change that balance. Bringing the parasympathetic nervous system back into the equation is huge because it's the driver of all of the body's primary processes, and there needs to be synergy between those two for the brain and the body to go and work the way that it's supposed to, for the immune system to work the way that it's supposed to, because a brain imbalance equals a body imbalance. And when a child has a high functioning brain, because there's no stressors that are decreasing its function, a child will always have the greatest ability to succeed in school, in sports, and in life. So let me go ahead and check here to see if there's any questions. All right, so I don't see any other questions here on the screen. So for those of you that are on the webinar here, I want to thank you very much for popping in and spending some time with us this evening. If there are any questions, please go ahead and shoot them up into the chat box here before we go. If you are on Facebook, do me a favor and make sure that you go over and share this with other people that you find may value the information here that we provided here tonight. If you have questions, we will go ahead and also post the contact information for Nicole and for Dr. Levatin on our Facebook page. But Nicole, for those of you, for those viewers that are watching, let everyone know how they can contact you.
Oh, so you can reach me at Vital Choice Health Store. Our number is 440-885-9505. So you can call there. You can also send questions through our website, which is vchoice.com. If you go to vitalchoice.com, that's a seafood company, and they don't like calls there. So vchoice.com, and you can reach me through there.
All right, and if you're trying to reach Dr. Tenpenny, if you have questions for her, she works at Tenpenny IMC Integrative Medical Center, and you can find her at tenpennyimc.com is the website address, and you can call the office, or they have a direct message service. You can reach you through her right through there as well. My name again is Dr. Scott Haggerty, and if you have questions for us, have concerns that you'd like to talk to us about, then you can go ahead and contact us. Our office number is 440-230-2300, or you can go to our website, www.elitehealthandwellness.net, and is all spelled out. And so there's a lot of information on there about who we are and what we do. If you have additional questions, also go to our Facebook page. We have a lot of different topics that we put videos up about over the years that may be beneficial for you and your family. So this is Dr. Scott and Nicole. So I'd like to thank Nicole for being a guest. Did a fantastic job. And for those of you who are watching tonight, keep your eyes peeled. There's a lot more coming. We're going to be doing tons more webinars together, okay? All right, this is Dr. Scott out of here. God bless and be elite.